The Alpha King locked her in his bed, but destiny had other plans. The forest was silent that night. Not the kind of silence that brings peace, but the kind that breathes before the storm. The moon hung heavy above the world, its silver light bleeding through the trees as if watching what should never be seen. And there she was, the Omega girl, running barefoot, breath trembling in the air, heart pounding like thunder inside her fragile chest. The wind tore through her tangled hair, as if trying to whisper her fate. Every step she took left a mark on the damp ground, traces of her desperation scattered behind her. Her pulse echoed in the darkness. The shadows seemed alive. They followed her, watching, waiting that she had escaped. Or so she thought. Then a growl, low, deep, ancient, the kind of sound that didn't belong to any mortal creature. Her body froze. Every instinct screamed run, but her legs betrayed her. The scent hit her before the presence did. Dark, powerful, intoxicating. It wasn't just any wolf. It was him, the Alpha King. The sound of his steps was thunder-wrapped and silk-soft, yet unstoppable. Each one drew closer until the night itself seemed to kneel before his power. The Omega girl turned, her breath catching as her gaze met eyes like burning gold in the shadows. Eyes that saw through her soul. He didn't speak at first. He didn't have to. The air around him pulsed with dominance. His scent, laced with wild danger and raw heat, filled her lungs until she could hardly breathe. And then his voice low, commanding, rough as stone and smooth as sin broke the silence. "Did you really think you could run from me?" The words struck her like lightning. Her lips trembled, but no sound came out. He took a step closer, and the world seemed to shrink. "You belong to me," he said again, slower this time. As though he was tasting the truth of it, her heart rebelled. Her eyes burned with tears and fury. "I belong to no one." A smirk, dangerous, beautiful. "You will." Before she could react, his hand moved faster than the wind. Fingers like iron wrapped around her wrist, pulling her close enough that her heartbeats collided with his. The warmth of his body burned through her skin. His breath brushed her ear. "Defy me again, little Omega, and I'll make sure you remember what happens to those who challenge their king." She should have screamed. She should have fought. But something inside her, something ancient and buried deep, responded to that voice. The pull of the mate bond. It wasn't a myth. It wasn't fair. And it wasn't something she could resist. He leaned closer, his breath carrying a promise she didn't want to understand. "Your scent called to me," he whispered. "Your fear only makes it stronger." The forest held its breath as he lifted her effortlessly into his arms. Her body stiffened, but his strength was unbreakable. The moonlight followed them as he carried her back toward the castle, the one whispered about in the villages as cursed. Forbidden, haunted by the blood of kings, the walls rose like black stone teeth from the mountainside, shimmering under the moonlight. Torches flickered against the cold wind as the great doors groaned open. Inside, shadows danced on golden pillars. The air smelled of smoke and dominance. He carried her through the endless halls, each step echoing like a heartbeat. She didn't dare speak. She only watched the carved wolves on the walls, the heavy velvet curtains, the throne that waited in silence. Then, the door closed behind them. A chamber filled with darkness, and in its center, a bed carved from ancient oak massive, draped in deep crimson sheets. The Alpha King set her down, his gaze never leaving her face. "Why me?" she whispered, voice cracking like fragile glass. He tilted his head, studying her as though she were something rare and dangerous. "Because fate doesn't ask permission," he said quietly. "And neither do I." His words sank into her soul like claws. She wanted to fight, to break free, but every time she looked into his eyes, something inside her shattered and reformed again. The air between them burned. He stepped closer until she could feel the heat of his breath against her skin. I can smell your defiance, he murmured. It's intoxicating. Let me go. She pleaded, voice trembling. His hand brushed against her cheek, unexpectedly gentle. I could, he said, but I won't. Her tears glistened under the moonlight. The bond-wild, untamed tightened between them. It wasn't love. Not yet. It was something deeper. Something primal. He turned away suddenly, as if fighting his own instincts. His voice grew colder. You'll stay here until I decide what to do with you. Then he left. The door locked behind him with a sound that echoed like destiny closing its hand. She sat there, trembling, staring at the door. She could still feel his presence everywhere, in the air, in her heartbeat, in the pull beneath her skin. Outside, thunder rolled. The storm had come at last. But inside that storm, something strange began to bloom. Not fear, not hatred. Something else. The Omega girl didn't know it yet. But this night, the night of chains and moonlight, would change everything. Because destiny wasn't done with her yet. She dreamed that night. Dreamed of eyes of gold and a voice that whispered her name like a prayer and a curse. Dreamed of a future painted in fire and longing. When she woke, the world outside was still dark. The air was thick with the scent of rain and power. And then she heard its footsteps approaching again. The door opened. He stood there, every inch a king, power wrapped around him like armor. His gaze locked on her, unreadable, dangerous. You didn't eat, he said quietly, his tone softer now. Why? She hesitated. I don't eat when I'm in a cage. A flicker passed through his eyes, something like guilt, quickly buried. You misunderstand, he said. You're not in a cage. Then why am I locked in? He said nothing. Instead, he placed a tray on the table beside her, the scent of warm bread and honey drifting through the room. Eat, he said simply. She stared at him, uncertain. Are you always like this? Commanding? Cold? He looked away, his jaw tightening. A king doesn't have the luxury of warmth. For a moment, silence hung between them. Then she whispered, almost too soft to hear, maybe that's why you're lonely. His head turned sharply, eyes blazing. What did you say? She met his gaze, unflinching. You heard me. Something dangerous passed between them then, not anger, not hate, but something raw. Something that burned and healed at the same time. He took a step closer. Careful, little Omega, he warned, voice low. You're treading close to fire. Maybe I'm done running from fire, she whispered back. He froze. For the first time, the mighty Alpha King seemed unsure. His eyes soft barely, but it was enough for her to see that beneath the armor of dominance, there was a man who bled. Asterisk without another word. He turned and left again. But this time he didn't lock the door. That night she stood by the window. Rain kissed the glass. Lightning painted the sky in silver veins. The forest whispered beyond the walls. Freedom was just beyond reach. Yet she didn't move. Because her heart didn't want to run anymore. She hated herself for it. For feeling the pull. For wondering what pain hid behind his golden eyes. For wanting to understand the man who had captured her. She closed her eyes and pressed her hand over her heart. It beat wildly, whispering a truth she refused to accept. This was no ordinary fate. This was the bond of souls twisted by destiny, by power, by something older than love itself. And in the echo of that storm, in the quiet of that forbidden night, she realized her story had only just begun. The storm had ended, but its memory lingered. The world outside was damp and trembling, soaked in silence. The scent of wet earth drifted through the open window where the Omega girl stood, her arms wrapped around herself, her heart heavy with confusion. The Alpha King hadn't locked the door. That should have meant freedom. But she hadn't moved. Something invisible tethered her to that room, to the storm that lived in his eyes. Every time she closed her own, she saw him again. The raw power in his presence. The darkness that clung to him like armor. The loneliness he tried to hide behind the weight of command. She hated it. Hated that she could feel him even when he wasn't there. The mate bond was cruel, binding two souls that should never have met. And yet, something deep inside whispered that maybe destiny had its reasons. Asterisk. The first rays of dawn spilled across the floor like golden fire. She turned slowly, her gaze falling on the tray he had left. The bread had gone cold, the honey hardened. She sighed. Hunger gnawed at her, but pride was louder. She wasn't his prisoner. She wasn't his pet. She was a survivor. The sound of boots echoed in the corridor. She stiffened. That commanding rhythm, steady, sharp, could only belong to one man. The door opened. The Alpha King entered, his presence filling the room like thunder waiting to strike. His dark cloak trailed behind him, rain still glistening in his hair. His golden eyes found her instantly, as if they'd known exactly where she would be. "You're still here," he said, his tone unreadable, her chin lifted. "You didn't lock the door. I didn't need to." Something in the way he said it made her chest tighten. His confidence wasn't arrogance, it was truth. He knew she wouldn't leave. He knew the bond had begun its cruel work. He stepped closer. The air grew heavier. "I thought you'd run." She looked away. "Maybe I should have, but you didn't." "No," she whispered. "I didn't." For a moment, silence stretched between them. Then he moved toward the window, his eyes scanning the forest beyond the castle walls. "You don't understand what this place is," he said softly. "The world outside isn't kind to your kind, my kind." She asked sharply. He turned to her, eyes glinting. "Omegas. Fragile hearts born into a world that wants to own them." Her jaw tightened. "And what does that make you?" "A king," he said simply. "One who's been owned by his crown long before you ever existed." There was no pride in his voice, only exhaustion. For the first time, she saw it, the weight in his shoulders, the shadows beneath his strength. "Why do you keep me here?" She asked quietly. "If you wanted power, you already have it. If you wanted obedience, I'll never give it." He looked at her for a long time, the silence between them thick with everything unsaid. Then finally he whispered, "Because I don't want power. I want peace, and you're the first thing that's made me feel like I might find it again." Her breath caught. For a heartbeat, the room felt too small, too alive. But before she could answer, he turned sharply and walked toward the door. "Stay here. Don't leave this room until I return." "Or what?" she challenged. He glanced over his shoulder, a dangerous smirk tugging at his lips. "Or you'll find out why they call me the Alpha King." And then he was gone. Hours passed. The castle was quiet, too quiet. She paced the room, her fingers tracing the carved walls, the heavy drapes, the faint scent of cedar and smoke that belonged only to him. Something strange tugged at her, a whisper of curiosity that overpowered her fear. Why had he said she wouldn't be safe outside? What secrets did these walls hide? The hall beyond her door was long and cold. Torches flickered along the stone, their flames bending with every breath of wind. She hesitated only a moment before stepping out. Every instinct told her to turn back, but the pull of truth was stronger. She moved quietly, barefoot against the marble floor. Her heart raced with every step. Then she heard it, voices. Deep, hushed, echoing from behind a half-open door. "The curse is growing stronger," a man's voice said. "If he doesn't bind it soon, the beast inside will break free." Her blood ran cold. Another voice replied, lower and older. The prophecy warned him. The bond would either save him or destroy him. She pressed a trembling hand against the wall. The prophecy, the curse. Her pulse thundered. Were they talking about him? Then came the words that changed everything. The Omega girl is the key, the elder said. Her blood ties to the moon's blessing. But if the bond completes, he will lose control. She gasped softly, stumbling back. Her hand hit a vase, sending it crashing to the ground. The sound shattered the silence. The voices stopped. Footsteps rushed toward her. She turned to run, but before she could take a single step, a strong arm wrapped around her waist from behind. Curiosity, a voice growled in her ear. Is a dangerous thing? The Alpha King. He pulled her back, his grip unrelenting. What did you hear? Her heart pounded. Enough to know you're hiding something from me. His jaw tightened. His scent was all around her, earth, rain, and something darker. You don't know what you're dealing with? Then tell me. She shouted, twisting in his hold. Tell me what you are. He released her abruptly, turning away, his breathing harsh. You shouldn't have left the room. Stop giving me orders. She cried. You said I wasn't your prisoner, remember? Then stop treating me like one. He spun back toward her, his golden eyes blazing. You don't understand. Every time you disobey, you make it harder for me to keep you safe. Safe from what? From me. He roared. The walls seemed to tremble. She froze, staring at him. His chest heaved, his hands clenched at his sides as if holding back something monstrous. What are you talking about? She whispered. His voice cracked low, raw, haunted. There's darkness inside me. Something the moon cursed into my blood long ago. When the rage rises, when the beast stirs, I can't control it. That's why no one gets close. That's why I locked you away. Her breath trembled. Then why bring me here at all? He looked at her, pain flickering behind the fury. Because your scent, your soul calms the beast. You're the only one who can. The silence that followed was unbearable. The truth hung between them like lightning. She took a step forward. Then let me help you. His eyes widened, glowing faintly gold. You don't know what you're saying. I do, she said softly. You're not the monster they whisper about. You're just broken. He inhaled sharply, as though her words had cut through armor forged by years of solitude. He turned away, voice low. If you stay, you'll regret it. And if I leave? He faced her again, gaze burning with an emotion that made her knees weaken. Then I'll spend eternity trying to find you. Her heart stuttered. For a moment, neither of them breathed. The world seemed to fade until there was only that look, that fire, that pull neither could deny. Then thunder rolled again, distant, but heavy with omen. The Alpha King's expression shifted. He looked toward the window, his eyes narrowing. They're here. Who? Hunters, he said. They've come for you, for me. He nodded. You carry a mark you don't understand. The same one that ties you to me. Before she could respond, he reached for her hand. His touch was fire and command and protection all at once. Stay close. Don't question anything I do. The castle trembled as the sound of footsteps and snarls echoed in the distance. Torches went out one by one, swallowed by the darkness. He pulled her behind him, his eyes glowing like molten gold as he faced the hall. They won't touch you, he growled. Not while I breathe. The air thickened with power. She could feel it, the beast inside him waking, answering the call of danger. The bond between them pulsed, alive, burning through every barrier of fear and fate, and as the first scream echoed through the night, she realized this wasn't just about a curse or a king. This was about destiny itself twisting, shifting, drawing them both into something neither could escape. The castle shook beneath the weight of thunder and steel. Torches flickered, banners snapped, and the scent of rain and fear tangled in the corridors. The Omega girl clung to the rhythm of her heartbeat while chaos howled beyond the doors. The Alpha King stood before her, shoulders squared, eyes burning like twin suns in the stormlight. "Stay behind me," he said, voice low but steady. "Whatever happens, don't be afraid." But she was afraid. Not of the hunters. Not even of death. She was afraid of losing the strange connection that had begun to pull her toward him. Thread by invisible thread, the doors burst open. Dark-cloaked figures flooded the hall, their blades gleaming, their shouts echoing off the stone. The Alpha moved like lightning swift, silent, unstoppable. He was strength and fury, a blur of motion between one heartbeat and the next. She could hardly breathe. Every strike he dealt felt like a vow, every roar a promise. Yet amid the clash, she saw the thing he'd tried to hide, the shadow curling under his skin, the shimmer of pain that flared behind his eyes. The curse was waking. "Stop," she cried, stepping forward. "You'll lose yourself." He didn't answer. The golden light in his gaze was fading to something darker, wilder. The ground trembled as his power broke free, waves of energy tearing through the air. The hunters faltered, fear replacing their rage. The Omega girl ran to him, ignoring the sparks of magic that clawed at the floor. She caught his arm. His skin was burning hot, trembling with the force he fought to contain. "Look at me," she whispered. "You're not alone." Her voice pierced the storm. His breath hitched. For a heartbeat, his eyes cleared, and the darkness hesitated. She pressed her hand against his chest where his heart pounded like thunder. "Remember who you are," she said again, louder this time. "Remember me." The bond answered. It surged between them like light through cracks and stone warm, fierce, alive. The curse recoiled, the wild energy folding back into the man who ruled it. The hall fell silent. The remaining hunters fled into the night, leaving only the echo of their retreat and the ragged sound of two hearts struggling to calm. The Alpha King sank to his knees, breath shuddering. She knelt beside him, her fingers trembling as she brushed a streak of ash from his cheek. "You saved me," he murmured. "You shouldn't have." "I didn't save you," she said softly. "I reminded you." He looked at her, then really looked, and something in his gaze changed. The pride, the distance, the iron mask. All of it cracked under the weight of gratitude and wonder. Outside, the storm broke apart. The moon slipped from its veil of clouds, silver and calm. Light poured through the shattered windows and spilled across the floor where they knelt. For a moment, neither spoke. There was only the quiet rhythm of their breathing, the soft hum of fate weaving itself around them once more. The Alpha King closed his eyes. "The curse isn't gone," he said. "But when you touched me, it obeyed you." She smiled faintly through her tears. "Then maybe it's not a curse after all. Maybe it's the beginning." He lifted his head, meeting her gaze. "The beginning of what?" She hesitated, heart trembling. "Whatever destiny decides next." And in that fragile silence between ruin and hope, the bond pulsed again, gentle, bright, alive. Somewhere beyond the castle walls, the forest sighed under the returning peace. The night had ended, but their story had only just found its light. Dawn crept slowly across the shattered halls of the castle. Pale light filtered through broken windows, touching the stones that had once echoed with battle cries. Now they were quiet, save for the soft crackle of fire and the whisper of wind carrying the scent of rain. The Omega girl stood by the window, her arms folded against the chill. Below, the courtyard was still scarred from the night's fight-scattered blades, torn banners, traces of smoke winding into the morning sky. The forest beyond shimmered with mist, its secrets hidden once again. She turned when she heard him behind her. The Alpha King stood at the doorway, silent, watching her. The light struck his face, revealing lines of exhaustion and something deeper vulnerability. His cloak was gone, his armor dented, his hand wrapped in cloth stained faintly with blood. Neither spoke for a long time. "You should rest," she said finally. Her voice was soft, cautious. "I've rested enough," he replied. But his voice wasn't the same, less commanding, more human. "My people are tending to the wounded. The walls will hold." She nodded, though her eyes didn't leave him. "You were almost lost last night." He looked away, jaw tightening. "I told you what would happen if the beast inside me woke. And yet you fought it." She stepped closer, her tone growing stronger. "You fought for me." His gaze met hers again, fierce and searching. "I couldn't let them take you. The hunters weren't after me this time, they wanted you." Her stomach twisted. "Because of the mark?" He hesitated, then nodded. "The mark and what it means. What does it mean?" she asked. He turned to the fire, its glow painting his face in gold and shadow. "Long ago, the moon goddess bound our bloodlines together. Every alpha king is born with power enough to destroy or protect the packs. But that power comes at a cost, rage, curse, and solitude. The only force that can balance it is the moon's chosen, an omega who carries her light." She froze. "You're saying I was chosen for you?" "No," he said softly. "You were chosen for yourself, but fate tied our paths together." The words hung in the air between them, heavy with meaning neither dared to touch. She looked into the flames, eyes glistening. "I don't know if I can be what destiny expects." He turned toward her, his expression softer than she'd ever seen. "Destiny doesn't ask for perfection. It only asks for truth." For a moment, silence filled the room again, comfortable this time. Steady. He moved toward the table and poured water into a cup, his hands trembling slightly. She noticed and frowned. "You're hurt." "It's nothing," he said, but his voice betrayed him. Without thinking, she took the cup from him and set it down. Then gently, she reached for his bandaged hand. "Sit," she whispered. He hesitated but obeyed, lowering himself onto the bench by the fire. She unwrapped the cloth, revealing a deep gash along his palm. The skin was torn, the edges blackened by the curse's residue. She drew in a sharp breath. "This isn't from a blade." He shook his head. "It's from the magic I used to protect you. It feeds on me when I resist it." Her heart tightened. "You're bleeding because of me." He looked up, his eyes warm despite the pain. "I've bled for worse reasons." She didn't know why that made her want to cry. Instead, she pressed a clean cloth to the wound and began to wrap it again, her fingers brushing his skin. The air between them grew quiet and strange soft, charged, fragile. When she finished, she didn't pull her hand away. "You don't have to fight alone," she whispered. He held her gaze, the firelight reflecting in his eyes like molten gold. "You don't understand, little one. Being alpha means standing apart. My strength is what keeps them safe, and who keeps you safe?" She asked that the question hit him harder than any blade could. His breath caught. His eyes softened, then looked away. "No one," he said. She smiled faintly. "Then maybe that's why fate sent me." He didn't answer, but something unspoken passed between them, a quiet surrender neither had expected. Asterisk outside. The wind rose again, carrying with it the faint sound of wolves calling to one another from the distant woods. The song was low and mournful, a promise of loyalty and loss. The Alpha King stood and walked to the window, watching the mist roll over the hills. "They're calling the packs together," he said. "The council will come soon. They'll demand to see you." "Me?" He nodded. "They'll want to know why I've broken the old laws, why I've claimed an omega without the ritual." Her breath quickened. "You claimed me?" His expression flickered. "By saving your life, I bound us before the moon goddess. Whether I wanted to or not, it's done." She stepped back, her heart pounding. "And what happens now?" "Now," he said, turning toward her, "we prove to them that fate doesn't make mistakes." She shook her head, half in disbelief, half in fear. "And if they don't believe it?" Then they'll come for you again, he said quietly. And this time, not even I may be able to stop them. The words struck her like a cold wind. Yet beneath the fear, something fierce stirred in her chest courage. I won't hide anymore, she said. If this mark means something, if I'm part of this prophecy, then I'll face it. With or without your permission. He looked at her, startled, then almost smiled, a rare, fleeting thing that softened the darkness in his face. You have the heart of a queen, he said. She met his gaze with steady eyes. Then start treating me like one. The silence that followed was not cold, but warmed two souls standing in the same fire, learning that strength could live in gentleness to dot as the sun climbed higher. Light spilled through the broken glass, bathing them in gold. The castle that had felt like a cage now shimmered like the beginning of something new, and though danger still waited beyond those walls, both of them felt it, the shift in the air, the whisper of destiny weaving closer. The Alpha King looked out toward the horizon, his voice quiet but certain. They'll come soon. Be ready. The Omega girl took a deep breath and stood beside him. I already am. And for the first time since the night of chains and moonlight, he believed her. The sound of horns broke the morning calm dot. It started faintly, one low call from beyond the forest edge, then another answered from the mountains, and then another, until the air trembled with a chorus of echoes. It was not the cry of war this time, but of gathering. The call that summoned the Council of Alphas. The Omega girl stood on the balcony beside the Alpha King, her heart pounding. From this height, she could see movement through the mist. Wolves in silver, brown and black furs forming lines, men and women shifting back into human form as they approached the gates. Cloaks bearing the marks of ancient houses fluttered in the wind, each one carrying both pride and suspicion. They're early, she whispered. They never arrive. Late when power is at stake, the Alpha King replied, his tone heavy with memory. Every pack leader wants to see the curse with their own eyes. She looked at him, noticing the stiffness in his shoulders, the faint tremor in his jaw. He wore his crown again, a circlet of dark steel and onyx that glowed faintly under the sunlight. Yet somehow, he looked less like a ruler and more like a man walking into a storm he could not escape. You're not afraid of them, she said. No, he paused. But I am afraid of what they'll make you feel. Her brows drew together. What do you mean? They will test you, he said quietly. They will question your worth, your bond, your very right to stand beside me. And if they see weakness, they will use it against you. She straightened, her voice steady. Then I won't let them see any. The faintest smile touched his lips, sad, proud, almost tender. You speak like a wolf already. I'm learning from the best. When the council finally entered the great hall, the room filled with energy so tense it could have shattered glass. There were 12 alphas, each a leader of an ancient pack. Some wore battle scars like medals. Others carried their pride in the sharpness of their eyes. The scent of power, dominance, and barely restrained fury hung thick in the air dot at the far end of the hall. The Alpha King stood tall, his black cloak trailing like a shadow. The Omega girl stood beside him, her posture straight but her hands hidden in the folds of her gown to conceal their trembling. One of the Alphas, a broad man with silver hair and eyes like stone, was the first to speak. So it's true, he said. You've broken the law. The king's voice was calm. I followed destiny. A murmur rippled through the room. Destiny? Another alpha, a woman with braided red hair, scoffed. You call this destiny claiming an omega without the ritual of the moon? You endanger us all. She saved my life, he said, and I saved hers. The moon's mark burned upon her the moment I touched her. It was not my choice, it was hers. The council turned their eyes on the Omega girl. She felt the weight of their gaze pressing into her skin. Some eyes were curious, some hostile. What is your name, child? The red-haired alpha asked. Her voice trembled, but she lifted her chin. Lyria. And you believe yourself worthy to stand beside the Alpha King? I don't know about worth, she said softly, but I know I didn't ask for any of this. The moon chose me. If you have doubts, take them to her. The hall went silent. Even the fire seemed to hold its breath. The Alpha King's eyes glimmered with pride. She speaks the truth, he said. The mark is real. And so is the bond. Another alpha slammed his hand against the table. We've seen fated bonds before, but never between a king and an untested omega. What happens when the beast in him rises again? When her light fades, you risk the balance of every pack. The king's eyes flashed gold for a brief, dangerous moment. I would die before I let my curse touch her. Would you die for her? He didn't hesitate. Yes. The words fell like thunder. Lyria's breath caught. Around them, the council erupted in protest voices rising, accusations flung like arrows. He's blinded by the mark. The curse spreads. We must separate them. The king slammed his hand on the table, and the air crackled with power. Enough. The torches flared, the floor trembled, and for a heartbeat, silence swallowed everything. His voice dropped low, steady as stone. I called this council not to beg for approval, but to show you the truth. The war with the hunters is coming again. They've already breached our borders. They want her because she carries the moon's light, the one thing that can break their darkness. If you doubt me, send your scouts. You'll see what's coming. The red-haired alpha frowned. You say she can stop them? Yes, he said, but not if you waste time doubting her. All eyes turned to Lyria again. The room was heavy with judgment and fear. She swallowed hard, then stepped forward, her heart thundering, but her voice clear. I'm not a weapon, she said. I don't know what this light inside me is or how to use it, but if it can save lives, I'll learn. You don't have to believe in me. Just don't stand in my way. A murmur of surprise moved through the council. The silver-haired alpha studied her for a long time, then nodded slowly. She has fire, I'll give her that. She has more than fire, the king said. She has purpose. When the meeting ended, the council agreed to stay for 3 nights to watch, to test, to see if the bond was real. As the hall emptied, the king turned to her. You did well. I spoke the truth, she said softly. But they still don't trust us. They will, he replied. Or they'll regret it. She gave him a small, weary smile. You always sound like a storm waiting to happen. He looked at her, eyes glinting like dusk. That's what I am. She tilted her head. And what am I? For a long moment, he said nothing. Then quietly, the calm after. The words settled in her chest like warmth, like belonging. That night, the castle was alive with whispers. Some said the Omega girl was cursed, others that she was blessed. Some feared her. Others envied her. Lyria stood in the courtyard, looking up at the full moon. The mark on her skin shimmered faintly beneath her sleeve, pulsing in rhythm with her heartbeat. When the Alpha King joined her, she didn't turn. Do you ever get tired of pretending you're not afraid? She asked. He stopped beside her. Who says I'm pretending? She looked at him then, surprised. You're the Alpha King. You're not supposed to be afraid. I'm afraid of losing control, he admitted. And now I'm afraid of losing you. Her heart ached. Then maybe we both need to learn not to run from fear. He watched her as moonlight painted her face in silver. You're changing me, he said. Maybe you were meant to change. She whispered. He reached out, hesitated, then took her hand, gently, reverently, like it was something sacred. The council will test us tomorrow, he said. They'll want proof of the bond. What kind of proof? His eyes darkened slightly. The kind that reveals truth, or destroys it. Lyria took a deep breath. her fingers tightening around his. Then we'll face it together. And as the moon climbed higher, casting its glow over the castle, the bond between them pulsed stronger than ever alive. Defiant and unbreakable. Destiny was no longer a whisper. It was a storm rising. The next dawn arrived shrouded in silver mist. The castle, once filled with whispers, now stood heavy and still. Even the wind seemed to hold its breath, waiting. The Omega girl, Lyria, walked beside the Alpha King through the long marble corridor leading to the inner courtyard. Every step echoed like a heartbeat. Every glance from passing guards carried the same message: they are watching. She felt it in her chest, the pulse of the mark, glowing faintly beneath her skin. It had grown warmer since last night, like the moon itself was alive inside her. They'll expect me to fail, she whispered. They expect us both to fail, he replied, his tone calm but low, like thunder before a storm. That's why we won't. She glanced up at him. His expression was unreadable, all sharp lines and silent fire. Yet his hand brushed hers briefly, just once. Just enough to steady her heart. When they entered the courtyard, 12 Alpha leaders stood in a perfect circle, their cloaks heavy with the symbols of their packs. At the center burned a silver flame, the moonfire, a sacred light used to test truth and fate. The silver-haired Alpha stepped forward. The council has spoken. The trial of the moon bond shall begin. If your connection is blessed by the goddess, the flame will rise. If it is cursed, it will fall and consume you both. Lyria swallowed hard. The air shimmered with magic, sharp and electric. The Alpha King didn't flinch. We're ready. Then step into the circle, the red-haired Alpha commanded. They did. The silver light wrapped around them, coiling like living threads. The crowd grew silent. The Alpha King reached out his hand. Trust me. Lyria took it. The moment their palms touched, the mark on her arm flared bright, blinding. Alive. A surge of warmth flooded her body, not painful, but overwhelming. She gasped as memories not her own flashed before her eyes, visions of battles, blood, and an endless sky filled with howling wolves. She saw him, younger, wounded, alone. And beneath it all, she felt what he never said aloud, the crushing weight of kingship, the loneliness behind his power. Her breath trembled. You've carried this for so long. He met her gaze, his voice barely a whisper. And you're the first who ever saw it. The flame pulsed, rising higher. Then came her turn. His power touched her thoughts softly at first, then deeper. He saw her memories, a childhood in the shadows, running from hunters, the night she learned to hide her scent. The fear that no one would ever see her as more than an Omega meant to obey. Something inside him broke. He drew her closer, his eyes fierce. Never again, he said. You'll never hide again. The moonfire roared upward, silver turning to gold. The courtyard filled with wind and light, swirling like a living storm. The council shielded their eyes. Impossible, one shouted. No bond has burned this bright in a century. But the flame wasn't done. It wrapped around them both, binding them in a circle of glowing light. And from within, a voice soft, distant, divine echoed through the air. 2 souls. 1 path, bound not by law, but by choice. Then the light faded, leaving only silence. Lyria fell to her knees, gasping. The king caught her before she hit the ground. His touch steadied her. His eyes searched hers, filled with awe and something gentler than power, something human. It's done, he whispered. The goddess herself spoke. The silver-haired Alpha stepped forward slowly, his face pale. So it's true, he said. The curse and the light have merged. The red-haired Alpha frowned. And what happens when such power meets fear? What happens when enemies come for her again? The king stood, his tone like steel. Then they'll face both of us. That night, the castle celebrated. but not everyone rejoiced. Shadows moved in the outer hall's messengers, carrying word to unknown ears in her chamber. Lyria sat by the window, looking at the moon's reflection on the lake below. The bond mark still shimmered faintly. She could feel him, even from across the castle, his heartbeat, his pain, his thoughts brushing against hers like whispers. "You're not resting," came his voice from the doorway. She turned. The Alpha King stood there, dressed in dark robes instead of armor, his crown gone. For once, he looked less like a ruler and more like a man searching for peace. "I can't," she admitted. "When I close my eyes, I see the flame. I hear her voice." He moved closer, the firelight painting gold across his features. "It's not a curse," he said softly. "It's a promise." "To what?" "To never walk alone again." She looked down, her voice barely a whisper. "And if the others turn against you because of me, then they were never truly my pack." His certainty, quiet but fierce, filled the room with warmth stronger than any fire. She met his gaze, emotion rising in her chest. "You don't even know if I can control this power." "I don't need to know," he said, "because I've already chosen to believe." Her eyes stung with unshed tears. "Why me?" He smiled faintly. "Because when the moon chose you, she gave me back my heart." The silence between them stretched soft, endless, alive. Outside, the wolves howled a chorus of unity. The wind carried their song across the land, a sign that the packs had accepted what the goddess had declared. But far beyond the mountains, in the darkness where no moonlight reached, something else stirred. A presence that had slept for centuries opened its eyes. A low, cold whisper slithered through the night. "The moon's flame has awakened, then so shall the shadow rise." Lyria shivered as the wind shifted. Somewhere deep inside, the mark on her skin pulsed again once. Twice like a warning. Destiny was not finished with them yet. The celebrations had ended hours ago, but the echoes of laughter and music still lingered faintly through the castle halls. The torches burned low, their flames flickering like tired hearts after too much joy. The Alpha King stood alone on the balcony overlooking the dark forest. His gaze was fixed on the horizon, where silver clouds drifted across the moon. The night smelled of rain and smoke and something else. Something wrong. He could feel it in his blood. A pulse, a warning. The bond had changed everything. Since the trial, he could feel Lyria's emotions like waves brushing against his own soft, gentle, pure. But now, beneath that warmth, he sensed something colder moving closer. He turned when she entered, her bare feet silent against the stone floor. Her gown was pale blue, the fabric light as mist, her hair loose and glimmering in the dim light. "You're still awake," she said quietly. "I could say the same for you." She joined him at the railing. For a while, neither spoke. The forest below whispered, restless. "Something's coming," he said finally. Lyria's hand brushed his arm. "You feel it too?" He nodded. "The shadow." The hunters weren't the true enemy. They were only its servants. Her breath trembled. "What is it?" "A curse older than my bloodline," he said, his eyes darkening. "The same power that once destroyed half our world. The moon sealed it away in the abyss, but when our bond awakened the light, the shadow must have felt it." Lyria turned toward him, her voice low. "Then it's my fault." He looked at her sharply. "No, they'll never say that. But if the bond called it back, then we'll fight it," he said firmly. "Together." There was no fear in his voice, only resolve. But in his eyes she saw the truth. He was terrified, not for himself, but for her. By morning, the castle was already stirring. Messengers brought reports of strange attacks near the northern borders, villagers disappearing. Animals found turned to ash. The scent of black magic in the air, the Council of Alphas, reconvened in haste. "This is no ordinary enemy," said the red-haired Alpha. Our scouts found symbols burned into the ground marks of the abyss. The silver-haired Alpha slammed his hand on the table. I warned you. The bond disturbed the balance. The shadow rises because of this. Lyria's eyes flashed. Then tell me how to stop it instead of blaming me. The hall went silent. The Alpha King spoke next, his tone calm but sharp. Enough. Pointing fingers won't save anyone. We need to prepare the packs. And if the packs refuse, then I will face it alone. A murmur of shock rippled through the council. But Lyria stepped forward, her voice steady. Not alone. He turned to her, and for a moment the chaos faded. In her eyes he saw light, the same light that had saved him once before. She's right, said the red-haired Alpha finally. If the shadow feeds on fear, then unity is our only weapon. Days passed in a blur of preparation. The castle transformed into a fortress. Warriors trained from dawn to dusk. Scouts brought news of spreading darkness villages cloaked in mist, skies that never brightened, and rivers turning black dot at night. Lyria's dreams were filled with whispers. The light will fade. The flame will fall. The heart will break. Each time she woke, the Alpha King was there, guarding her door, his eyes burning with quiet defiance. You should sleep, she whispered once. I can't, he said. When I close my eyes, I see shadows moving closer. She smiled faintly. Then we'll face them awake. The attack came at dawn. A thick fog rolled from the forest, swallowing the courtyard in silence. The guards raised their torches, but the light barely cut through the mist. Then from within it came a sound, a growl too low, too human. Positions, shouted the king. Figures emerged, creatures twisted by darkness, their eyes burning red, their movements jerky like puppets of unseen hands. The stench of rot filled the air. Lyria's mark blazed under her sleeve. The power within her stirred wild, unfamiliar, alive. She looked at the king. What do I do? Follow your instinct, he said, drawing his blade taut as the first creature lunged. Lyria raised her hand. The light burst from her palm in a wave of silver fire, blinding the attackers and cutting through the fog like dawn breaking. The courtyard erupted into chaos, steel clashing, wolves transforming, shadows screaming as they burned under her light. The Alpha King fought like the storm he was, silent, unstoppable. His sword glowed with ancient runes, each strike cutting through darkness like thunder through the sky. But the shadow was cunning. It gathered itself, forming into a shape, a tall, cloaked figure with eyes like bleeding stars. The voice that came from it was ancient and cold. You bear the moon's flame, child. But flames burn out. Lyria staggered back as the ground split beneath her feet. The power inside her flared wildly, almost uncontrollable. Asterisk, the Alpha King lunged forward, placing himself between her and the shadow. You'll touch her over my dead body. The shadow laughed, a sound like breaking glass. So be it. Dark tendrils lashed out, wrapping around him, dragging him to his knees. His sword fell, clattering across the stones. Stop, Lyria cried. She felt his pain through the bond, sharp, searing, unbearable. Her heart pounded as the mark on her arm ignited like fire. Let him go. She raised both hands, and light exploded from her in a blinding surge. The shadow screamed, retreating into the mist. When the light faded, the king collapsed. Lyria ran to him, cradling his face in her trembling hands. Stay with me, she cried. His eyes fluttered open, weak but steady. You did it. Tears streamed down her cheeks. I nearly lost you. He smiled faintly. You'll never lose me. Not while the moon still watches. But as she looked at the battlefield, she knew this was only the beginning. The shadow had been driven back, not destroyed, and deep within the mist, a whisper echoed once more, cold, patient, and full of promise. Asterisk, the light cannot save what fate will claim. The castle stood silent under a sky bruised with storm clouds. The sun of ash and iron still hung in the air, the remnants of a night that had nearly torn their world apart. Where laughter and command once filled the halls, only the echo of what had been remained, faint but alive. The Alpha King, wrapped in a dark cloak, heavy with his own blood and regret, stood by the shattered window of the throne room. His eyes, those haunting shades of golden ember, no longer burned with fury, only with questions. The Omega girl, Lyria, watched him from across the room. Her heart still raced every time their eyes met, though she had learned not to show it. The healers had done what they could for his wounds, but no one could touch the pain that ran deeper, the kind carved by betrayal, by power too heavy to carry alone. Asterisk, you should rest, she whispered softly. Her voice barely reaching him, he didn't turn. Rest? A hollow laugh escaped his lips. Tell me, little one, how does a king rest when the world itself no longer knows his name? She hesitated, walking closer until the flicker of torchlight caught the soft silver in her hair. You're still their king, she said, though the words trembled with doubt. He looked at her then, really looked. Am I? His gaze softened, but it held a storm behind it. When the shadow calls me by another name, the moment froze between them. The shadow. That word had haunted their nights. It wasn't a creature, not entirely. It was an echo, a memory, a curse, a reflection of everything the Alpha bloodline had tried to bury. Lyria's voice shook. What name? He turned fully now, stepping closer until the space between them felt charged with unspoken truth. Arion, he said. That's the name the shadow whispers. It was my name, before I was crowned, before I was broken. The torches flickered violently, as if the air itself recoiled at the sound. Lyria felt a chill crawl down her spine. Then the shadow isn't calling you from beyond, she said slowly, realization dawning like a rising moon. It's calling you from within. His breath caught. You sound like Eldara? The name stirred something in her memory. The seer? He nodded. She's the only one who ever told me the truth about the bond between light and shadow, about the cost of power. Before he could say more, the great doors opened, and Rian, his advisor, entered with a grim look. Your Majesty, the council demands an answer. They're gathering tonight. Let them wait, the Alpha King said coldly. They've waited long enough to betray me already. Rian's jaw tightened. They fear what they don't understand. The shadow frightens them. Lyria's hand moved instinctively, touching the king's arm, a gesture that surprised even her. Then show them the truth, she said. Not with words, but with the strength that doesn't come from fear. He stared at her hand, then at her face. There it was again, that spark he couldn't explain. The pull of fate that felt both cruel and kind. You speak like someone who has seen the moon, he murmured. Her eyes glistened. I have, she whispered. Last night when you fell. It spoke to me, Alpha. It said your shadow and my light are one. And that only together can we remember what we were meant to be. The silence that followed was heavy, sacred. Outside, thunder rumbled across the mountains, as if the heavens themselves agreed. Then the doors opened once more, and Eldara entered, the ancient healer whose eyes saw beyond time. Her cloak shimmered with threads of moonlight. So, she said softly, her voice echoing like wind through old trees. The moon has spoken again. The circle begins anew. The Alpha King bowed his head slightly. You told me once that destiny would come in a fragile form. Was it her all along? Eldara smiled faintly at Lyria, not fragile, merely waiting to remember her own power. Lyria frowned. I don't understand. The old seer's gaze deepened. You will. When the next moon rises, the shadow will call your name too. And when it does, You must decide whether to answer. The words struck her like lightning. My name? Yes, Eldara whispered. Because what you carry inside you isn't just the light. It's the other half of the king's curse. The bond was never only between mates. It was between two souls split by the moon itself. Lyria's knees felt weak. The king stepped forward, steadying her, his voice low. What does this mean, Eldara? It means, she said, eyes glowing faintly silver, that the shadow isn't your enemy. It's your mirror. And to defeat it, you must first face what you've both denied. The torches dimmed. The thunder rolled again. And somewhere deep within the castle's foundations, the ancient whisper rose once more, the same voice that had haunted their dreams. Arion? Lyria, the moon remembers. The king's eyes widened. Lyria gasped, clutching her chest as a searing warmth spread through her heart. Not pain. Not entirely, but recognition. He caught her as she stumbled, holding her close. Lyria. She looked up at him, her vision blurring, the world fading into a swirl of silver and flame. I see it now, she breathed. The shadow. It's not coming for us. It's coming from us. And before he could answer, the light in her eyes turned to pure moonlight, brilliant, blinding, as the whisper grew louder, merging into a voice that was both hers and his. The bond is awakening. Then everything went dark. Darkness. Not the kind that hides things, but the kind that reveals them. Lyria floated in a world of silver fog and fractured light. Every breath echoed. Every heartbeat sounded like thunder in the silence. She could not feel her body, only the pull of something ancient, something vast. The moon hung low above her, impossibly close, its light falling like threads of silk around her. And then she saw him, the Alpha King, Arion, standing across the mist, his figure dim but steady. His eyes were no longer gold. They glowed white, pure as the moonlight itself. But when he spoke, his voice trembled like it carried 1,000 years of sorrow. Lyria, you shouldn't be here. Her lips parted, but the words came out in a whisper. You called me. He shook his head slowly. No, the bond did. The mist between them began to twist, images forming, vanishing. A kingdom burning. A woman cloaked in silver flame. A wolf made of shadows standing between them both. What is this place? She asked. The moon's mirror, he said softly. The space between our souls. It's where truth hides when we try too hard to forget. As he spoke, she felt warmth blooming inside her chest again, the same strange energy from before, rising and falling with his every word. Their hearts beat in sync, the rhythm steady, inevitable. The moon pulsed once, and the world shifted. Suddenly she saw herself, not as she was, but as something more. Her hair glowed faintly, her eyes reflecting starlight. There was power in her, soft yet fierce. Arion stepped closer. You see it now, don't you? You were never just an Omega. The moon marked you long before I did. Her voice trembled. Why me? Because you were born under the blood eclipse, he answered. When the light and dark touched for the first time, the prophecy said that one born that night would either save the Alpha bloodline or end it. She gasped. End it? Yes, he said quietly. Because the same bond that joins us can destroy us if the balance breaks. Before she could respond, the fog around them rippled violently. A low growl echoed, ancient, endless. The shadow appeared again, but this time it had form, a towering figure of black smoke and ember eyes. Its voice was like wind through cracked stone. You cannot hide from what you are, it hissed. Arion, Lyria, you are the two halves of the same curse. Arion's teeth clenched. No, we are the cure. He stepped in front of her, his aura flaring, but the shadow's laughter rolled like thunder. A cure cannot exist without the sickness that created it. and then it lunged. Ear moved faster than thought, the ground shattering under his feet as he met the shadow mid-strike. The air burst with light and darkness colliding. Lyria cried out, feeling every surge of energy through their bond. His pain, his rage, his desperate love. Stop. She shouted, but the words only echoed into the void. She fell to her knees, clutching her chest. The bond burned like fire, but she realized it wasn't hurting her. It was calling her. The moon's voice whispered through the chaos. He cannot fight alone. You are the light, child. You must remember. Lyria lifted her head, tears shining. Remember what? Your name, the moon said. Your true name, and then it struck her, like lightning through her soul. Memories, flashes of lives she'd never lived. A wolf with silver fur running beside the golden one. Two spirits swearing loyalty beneath the blood eclipse. A promise made, then broken. Asterisk. I was there, she whispered. Before this life, I was there. The shadow paused mid-attack, its eyes narrowing. Ah, so the memory returns. Arion turned to her, voice breaking. Lyria, don't listen to it. But it was too late. The light burst from her chest, fierce, uncontrollable. The shadow screamed as it was thrown back, dissolving into smoke. The mist cleared. The moon's reflection rippled and broke. When the light faded, she was back, on the castle floor, gasping for air. Her hands trembled. The king was beside her, pale but alive. You're back, he said hoarsely, touching her face. I saw it. She whispered, voice shaking. The truth. About us. About the curse. His jaw tightened. Tell me. Tears fell, silent and slow. We weren't strangers, Arion. We've done this before. Lived, died, and been reborn, each time to try and fix what went wrong. The moon bound us not to love, but to break the curse we created together. He froze, eyes wide with disbelief. We created it? She nodded. In another life, we were gods of the old pack. You held the power of the sun and I the moon, but when we tried to bind both forces, we shattered the balance. The shadow was born, the fragment of that broken creation, and now it lives in both of us. The words fell like rain, each one heavier than the last. Arion's voice was raw. Then tell me, Lyria, how do we end it? She looked at him, her alpha king, her destiny, her mirror, and whispered, by remembering why we loved each other the first time. Outside, the storm broke. The first light of dawn touched the castle towers. Gold meeting silver once more. And for the first time in centuries. The moon and sun rose together. Morning rose softly over the ruined castle, painting the broken towers in gold. For the first time in years, sunlight touched the stone without shattering against storm clouds. The scent of rain lingered, gentle and pure, as if the world itself had sighed in relief. Lyri stood at the balcony, the wind brushing through her hair like a familiar hand. Her reflection on the marble floor shimmered faintly, the silver in her eyes catching the light. She could still feel it, the heartbeat that wasn't hers echoing in her chest. Behind her, footsteps, slow, steady, the Alpha King. He didn't speak at first. He simply stood there, watching her, as though trying to memorize the sight, the girl, who had come into his life like a whisper and turned it into something sacred. Finally, he said quietly, you should rest. She smiled without turning. I did. In the light that found me. He took a few steps closer, his voice softer now. You saw more than light, didn't you? Her fingers brushed the balcony rail. I saw us. Before the beginning, we weren't meant to be king and omega. We were meant to be balance. Arion's breath caught. And yet we broke it. She turned at last. Their eyes met, and the air between them seemed to hum, the same pulse that had drawn them together through every lifetime. We tried to control what was never meant to be owned, she said. Love was supposed to guide us, not bind us. He lowered his gaze. Then perhaps this time we learned to love without fear. The words were simple, but they trembled with truth. She took a small step toward him. Fear was what destroyed us, not fate. He looked up. In the morning light, his eyes no longer looked haunted. There was warmth there now, fragile but real. Do you still believe in what we are? Lyria's voice wavered. I do. Because every time the world ended, we still found each other again. Even when I didn't remember your name, my heart did. Something broke in him then, the silence that had lived too long between duty and desire. He reached out, not as a king, but as the man beneath the crown. His fingers brushed hers, hesitant at first. Then steady the bond responded, a quiet shimmer, a soft glow tracing their joined hands. I spent lifetimes searching for peace, he whispered. But peace isn't a place, is it? She shook her head gently. It's a person. For a moment, the castle seemed to disappear. There was only the wind, their joined hands, and the sound of two hearts finding the same rhythm. Ariam lifted her hand to his chest, where the scar from the shadow still burned faintly. It still hurts, he admitted. She smiled, tears slipping down her cheeks. Then let it. It's proof that you're still alive. He laughed softly, the first sound of joy since the war. You always were better at healing than fighting. And you, she said, always thought power was strength. But it's love, Ariane. It always was. He drew her closer then, not in possession, not in command, but in surrender. The sunlight wrapped around them, warm and weightless, as if the heavens themselves were blessing the moment. When he finally spoke again, his voice was barely more than a breath. Lyria, if we've done this all before, if we'll do it again, promise me this. In every life, no matter how dark it gets, find me first. She looked up at him through her tears, her smile trembling. Only if you promise to stop hiding behind your crown. Deal, he said. The wind rose, carrying their laughter through the shattered halls. For a heartbeat, the curse felt far away, like a nightmare fading at dawn. The moon's whisper brushed softly through her mind. Love was never your punishment, child. It was your path home. Lyria closed her eyes, letting the light sink into her. For once, she didn't fear the bond. She embraced it, the pull, the pain, the peace. And as the day broke fully over the castle, two souls that had been torn apart by time finally stood whole again. The shadow was not gone, but it was quiet, watching, waiting, because even darkness understood that love this strong was not its enemy. It was its mirror. The castle no longer felt haunted. It felt alive. Dawn spilled through the broken arches like liquid gold, kissing every wound the night had left behind. The scent of wet stone and wild roses drifted through the air, carried by a soft breeze from the forest. The howls of the pack echoed faintly in the distance, not of fear, but of awakening. The Alpha King stood on the grand steps of the citadel, the sunlight bathing his dark cloak in amber fire. His people watched in silence, warriors, healers, elders, all bearing scars of a war that had nearly broken them. Yet there was something new in their eyes now, something fragile but fierce. Hope. Iria stood beside him, dressed in pale silver that shimmered like moonlight itself. Her presence seemed to calm the restless hearts around her. Even the wind bent to her rhythm, the light softening wherever she walked. The Omega girl, who had once been a captive, now stood as the kingdom's heartbeat, the missing half of its soul. When Ariam looked at her, the world stilled. Are you ready? He asked softly. She nodded, though her hand trembled slightly in his. Are you? His smile was quiet, shaped by 1,000 storms. For the first time, yes. They stepped forward together, facing the gathered wolves. The crowd parted like a living sea. Eldara, the ancient seer, waited before the great stone altar, her staff glowing with faint silver veins. "Two souls once divided," she said, her voice echoing through the square. "Two halves of the same flame. The moon has called. The sun has answered. Now they must speak their vow, not as ruler and servant, not as Alpha and Omega, but as one." Lyria's pulse raced. Arion reached for her hand again, their fingers interlocking perfectly, as though molded by fate itself. He spoke first. His voice carried across the wind. "I, Arion, once a king of shadow and wrath, vow to lay down my crown before the truth of our bond. I swear to guard the light I once feared, to listen when silence falls, and to lead not by command, but by faith." His words rippled through the crowd. Every wolf bowed their head. For the first time, their alpha did not roar. He spoke gently, and the world obeyed. Then Lyria's turn came. Her voice shook at first, but with each word it grew stronger. "I, Lyria, born beneath the blood eclipse, vow to embrace the darkness I once ran from. I swear to heal the wounds I did not cause, to stand beside him, not behind, not below, but as his equal beneath the moon." The light around them deepened. The air thickened with energy, warm, ancient, alive. The bond between them flared like a pulse of the earth itself. The sky above began to shift, gold blending with silver. Sunlight and moonlight touched for the first time in centuries. Thought an eclipse was forming. The crowd gasped, falling to their knees as the heavens darkened and glowed all at once. Eldara raised her staff high, her voice trembling with awe. The moon and sun no longer war within the sky. They dance. Arion turned to Lyria, his golden eyes glowing brighter than ever. "It's us," he whispered. "They're mirroring us." She smiled through tears. "Then let's not stop dancing." And they didn't, as the light swirled around them. The world itself seemed to remember. Rivers surged with silver reflections, trees shimmered with dew like crystal, and every living creature in the valley felt the pull of something greater. The curse that had poisoned their land began to fade. Ariam looked down at Lyria as the eclipse reached its peak. "Do you feel it?" She nodded. "It's not just us anymore. It's everything." He brushed his thumb against her cheek. "Then let this oath be the last one we ever need." The moon whispered again, gentle this time, almost smiling. "The circle is closing." The balance returns dot as the light finally settled. They stood beneath a sky reborn, half gold, half silver, the horizon glowing in both directions. The pack rose to their feet, their eyes bright with tears and reverence. Rian, the king's advisor, stepped forward, bowing deeply. "Your Majesty." "The people are ready to follow again." Arion looked out across his kingdom, then down at Lyria. "No," he said quietly. "They won't follow. They'll rise together." Lyria squeezed his hand, the way it was always meant to be. And with that, the Alpha King and his Omega girl, the sun and moon reborn, sealed their vow beneath the eclipse. The curse was broken. The kingdom healed, but far beyond the mountains, in the shadow between stars, something stirred, watching, waiting, because every light, no matter how bright, casts a shadow. Night fell gently over the new world. The stars returned, brighter than before, their light no longer trembling behind clouds of despair. The castle, once a monument to war and power, now stood as a beacon of peace. Flowers bloomed where blood had fallen. The air carried not fear, but the quiet hum of harmony, and yet, peace always tests its keepers. The Alpha King sat upon the steps of the moon garden, the very place where his father once held council. His crown rested beside him, untouched, unnecessary. His eyes were fixed on the horizon, where the first hint of twilight silver painted the sky. Behind him, he heard footsteps, light, certain. Lyria. She moved like moonlight itself, her silver dress whispering against the stone. When she reached him, she didn't speak at first. She simply sat beside him, their shoulders touching. "It's quiet," she said finally. He nodded. "Too quiet?" Almost as if the world is holding its breath. She smiled faintly. Maybe it's learning how to breathe again. For a moment, there was nothing but the wind, soft, clean, alive. But beneath it, faintly, a sound stirred. A heartbeat, slow, deep, not his. Not hers, something. Other. Ariane's jaw tightened. "You hear it too?" Lyria's smile faded. The shadow. He rose, his aura flickering like the last flame of a candle. "I thought it was gone." "It was," she said softly, "until the light grew too strong." Her words struck like thunder. Of course, for every dawn there must be dusk. The balance they had restored demanded both light and shadow. Destroying it completely had never been the goal, only understanding it. He looked down at her, the wind stirring his dark hair. "Then this is our final task." She stood with him. Together, they walked beyond the castle, through the silent woods. The path glowed faintly under their feet, the trees bending in recognition. The moon hung above them, vast and watchful. The further they went, the heavier the air became, colder, thicker, as though the world itself remembered the pain that once lived here, at the edge of the forest. The shadow waited, but it was no longer a monster. It stood in the clearing, tall and human-shaped, cloaked in darkness that shimmered like smoke. Its eyes were neither cruel nor kind, only tired. When it spoke, its voice carried every echo of their past lives. "You came," it said. Ariane's hand found Lyria's. "We had to." The shadow tilted its head. "You think you've won?" "No," Lyria said quietly. "We've understood." The figure stepped forward, its form flickering. "Then tell me, little light, what is there to understand?" "That you were never our enemy," she whispered. "You were the part of us we refused to face." The shadow paused. For the first time, it seemed uncertain. Ariane stepped closer. "We tried to kill you in every life. And every time we failed, because you were us." My rage, her fear. Our mistakes, our pride. You only grew stronger because we kept denying you. The silence that followed felt endless. Then the shadow laughed, not mockingly, but softly, almost broken. "So you finally remember?" Lyria nodded. "We do." The figure's edges blurred, fading in the wind. "Then what will you do now, gods reborn? Will you banish me again?" "No," Ariane said. "We'll free you." He opened his hand. Light gathered in his palm, golden and warm. Lyria did the same, her light silver and calm. The two glows merged, not fighting, not overpowering, but blending perfectly. Together, they stepped forward and placed their hands on the shadow's chest, dotted their touch. The darkness didn't scream. It sighed, the clearing filled with light, soft, endless, alive. The shadow's form melted into 1,000 silver motes that rose into the air like fireflies. Each one carried a whisper: sorrow, laughter, love, loss, all the emotions they had buried across centuries. When the light faded, the clearing was empty. Only the wind remained. Lyria leaned against Ariane, exhausted but smiling. "It's over." He wrapped his arm around her. "No," he said gently. "It's beginning." They stood there in silence as dawn crept once more across the horizon, gold meeting silver as it always had. The curse was gone. The bond was whole. The world had healed. Double quotes. "Do you think the moon will ever stop testing us?" she asked, half smiling. Ariane looked up at the sky, where the fading stars watched them like old friends. "If it does," he said, "then maybe it means we finally learned what it wanted us to." "And what's that?" He looked down at her, his expression soft. "That light isn't the opposite of darkness. It's its promise." She smiled, tears in her eyes. And us? We're its proof. They stayed there until the sunlight touched their faces, warm, pure, endless. The wind carried their laughter into the world, where it would become legend. A story told under every full moon, a reminder that love, when true, doesn't end. It transforms, and somewhere, deep in the night sky, the moon shone brighter, not in mourning, but in peace, because two souls, after lifetimes of war and sorrow, had finally remembered what it meant to be one.